All right. Good morning, everyone from South Africa, that is. I realize for those of you in Malaysia, it's not morning time. But here in South Africa, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. And we are very excited to have been invited by Open Learning to take part in this conference. And we are also very excited about the conversation that we are going to have today. We definitely at SACAP Global are coming from a space of learning. We don't have all the answers. And we're hoping that some of you might have answers for us along the way. So really it's just a conversation where we don't want to set ourselves up as experts because we're not, we're learning. This is a new micro-credential space for us, and I'll tell you a bit more about that as we proceed. It would be great if everybody in the call can just say hi in the chat so we can see who we have with us today. My name is Caroline Williams, and I am head of SACAP Global. I oversee SACAP Global from both the business and academic perspective. And then my co-presenter today is Charlotte Hine, and she is our digital brand manager at SACAP Global. So it's lovely to be here with all of you. And yeah, some people saying hello from Mohammed, morning, and Julius and Stella. Hi, Stella. Thanks everyone for joining us. Balasanda, I hope I said your name right. Good to see you all. Fantastic. All right, so we're going to share a bit with you today, and please note down what questions you might have or put them in the Q&A section of the Zoom call. And then when Charlotte and I have finished sharing, we will have some time to answer your questions and maybe even ask a few of our own. Thanks, Charlotte. So we're going to tell you a bit about SACAP Global and the micro-credentials that we've just launched this year. We joined Open Learning earlier this year, and in the last 6 to 7 months, we've set up SACAP Global, we've set up a website, we've set up courses, we've set up a CRM system. So we've been working really, really hard, and we've done quite a bit. And so we hope that what we share with you might also help with learnings on your side as well. I think it's always interesting for us to see what other people are doing out there and learn together. So roughly what we're going to go through with you today is who we are as SACAP Global, what we offer, why we're offering it, where it's available, or how you can get to it. And that's more than just being on the Open Learning site, as you'll see a bit later, and how our students can make a purchase, and marketing SACAP Global through websites and other platforms. And then we're also going to chat a bit about our micro-credentials that we have on offer. We've got 4 so far that we're going to keep building on. And I'll share a bit with you about those, as well as how we are working with course equivalency, which is a little bit extra interesting because it's not only equivalency within South Africa, it's also trying to work within the Malaysian regulatory system so that the two can speak to each other as well. But a bit more about that later. Okay, so who are we? SACAP Global is a division of the South African College of Applied Psychology, known as SACAP. We've been running for over 25 years, and we're inspired by a vision of an empowered society knitted together by confident, self-aware individuals that are in healthy relationships, firstly with themselves, but then those around them as well in their immediate environment with, for example, family and in the broader community. And so we really try to play a critical and positive role within South African communities and society at large. And we do that by training practitioners in a few different fields: psychology, counseling, coaching, human resource management, business management, and social work as well. And we really are training change agents to then go out into the South African society and be able to positively impact community transformation around them. And what we've been doing for all of those 25 plus years is producing what we feel are high quality graduates who are able to blend skill, critical thinking and creativity to respond to the needs of society, ultimately leading to positive change. You see, we speak about applied psychology, and from the very beginning, SACAP has always been about equipping people with the skills, right from early studies within our degrees and diplomas and certificates, where students can start to practice what they're learning, and it's not just sitting, getting theory about the topics that they are covering. So we've been working in higher education for a long time in South Africa, which is, if you know, a very, very multicultural context, as is Malaysia. And so we feel that what we've learned from working in that kind of diverse context helps with us also wanting to bring our programs and our offerings to Malaysia. And so what is it that SACAP Global is offering? So it's a range of online short courses via the wonderful open learning platform that has been really, really great to partner with, to put up our courses. And these courses are designed for working professionals and people who are entering the job market that want certain practical skills and applied knowledge that's going to help them stay relevant in their careers, help them make a particular jump that they're wanting to make, or whatever their fields of interest are. And as I mentioned earlier, our areas of expertise are in psychology, communication, business management, human resources, and coaching. We also work within the social work space, but as yet we haven't put up any micro-credentials around social work. Thanks, Charlotte. And so we only just started, right? So these are our 4 courses and 1 short course that were 4 micro-credentials and 1 short course that we have put up so far on the open learning platform. And for us, the difference between the two really is that the short course isn't a subcomponent of one of our formal qualifications. So that short course you can see there called Coaching Skills for Managers, it has industry approval. The training hours are accredited by the International Coach Federation, so that's great. But it isn't actually a subcomponent of our qualification in relation to recognition of prior learning. And I'll get into that a bit later when I talk about our courses. Whereas our micro-credentials are actually subcomponents of modules within our qualifications. So ultimately, we're creating stackable courses that as students complete them, if they ever wanted to be able to one day do a degree with SACAP, they would be able to RPL for module exemption for those. And the ones we have at the moment that you can see are Intro to Human Behavior, Managing and Motivating People, Essential Communication Skills, and Intro to Management and Leadership. And I will get into those in a little bit more detail later. But first, I'm going to hand over to Charlotte, who's going to pick up and share a bit about why we do what we do and how we market our courses at SACAP Global. Thanks, Charlotte.
Thanks, Caroline. Let's look at why we do what we do at SACAP Global. We believe that lifelong learning is critical to career advancement, and working professionals and even those entering the workforce need to stay relevant in the ever-changing global economy. So what makes us unique? Caroline mentioned, we're a division of South African College of Applied Psychology. So we really put people first. Our courses are grounded in applied psychology and stem from that theory. We incorporate a human touch with online learning. That's also why the partnership with open learning fits quite well. So each of our learners their learning experience and journey is guided by industry experts. And a third unique selling point is that you can study while you work. So we've adapted an asynchronous learning style, which allows you to log on at any time and study at your own pace at a time that's convenient to you. As you know, online studying gives us all a lot of flexibility. So learners are able to jump between courses and disciplines as they maneuver through the courses hosted on open learning. And then our last unique selling point is that our learners gain cutting-edge skills and practical application from completing our micro-credentials and short courses. can take the knowledge and the skills that they've learned and go and apply it in real life scenarios. So why we facilitate our courses by industry experts, we feel that this brings an added advantage to all our learners online, and we have partnered with industry experts within the fields of psychology, communication, business management, resources, and coaching. The learning is quite engaging, and the course facilitators and the experts engage with learners on a regular basis throughout their learning journey. So where are our courses available? So we partnered with Open Learning this year because of the specific online learning environment that that Open Learning offers. So it's practical, it's social, and it focuses on an outcome-based learning. And learners can sign up either via Open Learning or via the SACAP Global website. So we developed a SACAP Global website that is also linked to Open Learning. Here's just a video walkthrough of our profile, which is hosted on OL. You can see all our courses are listed over there with a short introduction of what each course covers and start dates, duration, etc. Registration is really quick and simple, which helps for the usability of the learners. And then the website that we developed also speaks to the Open Learning platform. The reason why we did this as an extra add-on is the South African College of Applied Psychology, the South African local campus, has a website that allows them to track user engagement and just see exactly how the journey on the site is mapped out. So we've decided to take the same strategic business objective, and the look and feel of the brand is quite similar, but it just gives us a little bit of added data for us to monitor how the navigation works, are learners clicking on the right buttons, and is the information being shared effectively. So here's our walkthrough video that shows the listing of the various courses, overviews. We've also got an add to cart and a wish list function that we've added. And a main reason for this is that sometimes the website is also set up as an e-commerce site. And sometimes learners might need a bit of a nudge or encouragement to make a purchase. So as soon as you register and you add a course to your wish list, and you don't necessarily make that purchase, that gives us the opportunity to send out an email to you and just give you a heads up and just to share a bit more information about the course. And hopefully that will then result in someone making a purchase. As Caroline mentioned, we're fairly new to the open learning space. We've just launched this year, and we're now busy with a product testing of each of the courses. So we have 4 intakes a year. These might change in 2022, just depending on just the effects of how many learners we get and inquiries. So at the moment, we've got intakes in April, July, September, and November. And yes. Okay, so when we launched, we also incorporated some media channels just to build a bit of brand awareness in Malaysia. We used Google, Facebook, and YouTube, and it was quite interesting just to also see which of the channels performed better than others. And we at SACAP love looking at our data. We're quite result oriented, so we could check in on our campaigns daily and make tweaks and changes. So this was a very interesting way to launch the brand. And Yeah, so like I mentioned, we monitor our website traffic, and through our nurture mails, we touch base with learners that are registered and currently on their learning journey within open learning. So here is just an example of the type of emailers that we send out. Once you make a purchase, you'll get an automatic email that confirms which course you've bought and signed up for. And we also send out our reminders to learners throughout their learning journey. So if your course starts in a week or in 3 days, we'll pop you a mail just to say, remember, the course starts, log in, introduce yourself to the other learners in your course facilitator, and so on. And this just also allows us to keep our brand touch points and our channels open for communication, especially within the online learning environment where students are engaging with us from all parts of the world. So we do want to keep the conversation flowing and just share information students might need. And then we've incorporated 2 payment gateways on the SACAP Global website. The reason for this is, like Caroline mentioned, we are a South African-based college. That's where we've originated from. We've incorporated Netcash as a payment portal for our South African market. And then PayPal will be used for all our international course purchases. And then here we just feature a quick walkthrough video of the user journey, going from filtering your topic areas, choosing a course, adding it to your cart, and the checkout process included with that. So yes, like I mentioned, our website is based on an e-commerce layout, just to make the usability and the checkout process as easy as possible. So yes, I'm going to hand over back to Caroline, and she will give you a walkthrough of our micro-credentials and our stackable courses that will follow in 2022.
Thanks, Charlotte. So Charlotte's given us an overview of how we've set ourselves up, trying to make ourselves as accessible to students as possible. And as I was saying earlier, if you've got any questions, please note them down, and you'll have a chance later to ask them, and we'll chat through things together. So what we also thought you might find interesting is how we are working between our qualifications and the courses that we're working on. So just to start with, I'm going to take a few minutes just to tell you a little bit about each of the courses for your interest. So Intro to Human Behavior is really like a bit of a Psych 101 kind of course. So in it, students learn all about, various interpretations of human behavior, how mind and body work together, how social relationships shape human behavior, how our personalities influence our behavior. And they explore a whole lot of theories that those of you who may know a bit about psychology would be familiar with, things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Erik Erikson's stages of development, Kohlberg's moral development theory, and so on. And then managing and motivating people is very much around, what is human resource management in a business context? And how does a line manager in an organization work with the HR manager to complement the management of people in an organization? And covering motivational theory and practice, how do line managers motivate members of their staff to get the most out of them in terms of productivity, but also so that you have happy employees that are thriving in the workplace. And then it takes a look at employee wellness programs. What are they? What should good wellness programs incorporate? And then there's a particular focus in the last week that looks at how do you apply best practice in relation to all of these things that have been covered in the workplace as a manager or as an aspiring manager. Maybe if somebody wants to become a manager, they might do this course in preparation for that. Then there's essential communication skills. So, you might know that there's a lot of talk about soft skills, right? And how important these soft skills are compared to hard skills. I don't like the term soft because somehow it sounds lesser than in a way. So we prefer the term essential. And I think that's a big value add that we bring into the micro-credential space around psychology are all of these skills around understanding ourselves, understanding other people. How do we work together to get the most out of ourselves and what we offer and our teams and so on. And so really these courses are meant to be appealing to people in any kind of industry or sector, because all of us need to know, how to understand ourselves and how to understand other people and work better with other people. So in this essential communication skills course, we look at the foundations of effective interpersonal communication, various models of communicating and how to do it well. It focuses also on intercultural communication. It looks at the role of perception in effective communication. What am I thinking about myself and what am I thinking about you, and how that impacts how we communicate, and you're thinking the things at the same time about yourself and me, and how all of those dynamics play out in communication. It looks at verbal and nonverbal communication and how do you do those as best as possible. And it looks at how do we apply active listening and responding as effectively as possible in personal, professional, and social settings. And then finally, for Intro to Management and Leadership, here this looks at the basics of management and leadership. And the students cover general management. They look at leadership theories and organizational power and politics and how to manage and work with those things. They look at leadership communication and also, again, how to motivate employees. It explores managing information systems. As leaders, there's so much information these days, and we need to know how to manage it as best as possible and what data to pay attention to, and then how to use that data in managerial decision making. So that's another important topic that's covered. And then finally, how do all of these things come together to drive business success or failure, and looking at case studies around how to promote business success and learn from business failures as well. Because often we don't get things right first time, right? And failure is actually part of the success, and often what makes us successful at the end of the day. So that just gives you a bit of an overview of what our current 4 micros are covering. And then what is interesting now is this whole thing of course equivalency. So we're very excited that all of those micros received Open Cred's approval from Open Learning this year. So that's great. But something else we're also needing to be mindful of when we're developing these courses is maintaining equivalence between these courses and then the modules that are offered in our qualification. Because as I was saying earlier, we want students that complete these courses to be able to get module exemption in the qualification if they ever wanted to actually sign up and do a degree with us. So what we speak about is we speak about the source module, which means the module that's in the qualification that the micro-credentials come from. And how we have split it is we take one source module, which in our qualification is a 10-week module, usually worth around 14 credits in South Africa. So our credit system is different in South Africa to Malaysia, and I'll chat a bit about that in a sec. But that one module is then divided into 2 micros. So it's through completing those 2 micros that a student would then be able to get module exemption for the module in the qualification if they ever so wished. Thanks, Charlotte. If you can go on to the next slide. Okay, so we need to make sure of a few things from our side so that we are still maintaining the needed standards within our South African national qualifications framework. So it's like in Malaysia, there's an MQF, right? Malaysian Qualifications Framework. In South Africa, ours is called the National Qualifications Framework. So when we design the courses, we need to make sure that they are at the same level as the source module. So that is in terms of outcomes. The outcomes need to be equivalent and covering the same content as the source module. They need to be pitched at the right level of the National Qualifications Framework as the source module is. And then the assessments also need to be pitched at the right level as well, so that equivalency is maintained in that kind of way. And then sometimes we may add in outcomes in the micro, just because maybe there's little pieces of foundational knowledge or something we feel that needs to be added in, but at the minimum, they will be equivalent to the source module. Something we will need to be doing in the future moving forward is every time we make changes to our qualification, which we do, we're always getting student feedback. We're always updating them so that our module or qualifications, rather, content is, cutting edge. So as we make changes there, we'll need to be making the changes in our online short courses as well, so that equivalency is maintained. And the reading material, again, it might be different in the micros to the exact reading material and the qualification, but it's always needing to be equivalent so that the same content is covered, so that students are achieving the same or equivalent outcomes. Thanks, Charlotte. Okay, so here's just a diagram to explain how we've been working. So we have a Bachelor of Applied Social Science at SACAP in South Africa, which is a 3-year degree. And in that degree, we have a major, which is a major in psychology. And then we also have 3 streams. So in South Africa, students can pick to, everybody does the psychology major, but then they can pick, do they want to do a counseling stream with that? Do they want to do a business management stream with that? Or do they want to do a human resource management stream with that? And it's from that degree that we are drawing the material for our micros. So typically in South Africa, one of our modules, as I mentioned earlier, is 14 credits or 140 notional hours, which in Malaysia, you might think, that sounds odd, because it is. It's different to Malaysia, right? In Malaysia, 1 credit is 40 notional hours. So you can see the difference there between our South African regulatory system and Malaysia. And I must say that Malaysia is very progressive in the space of micro-credentials. The fact that the MQF recognizes them, has put out good practice micro guidelines. I mean, we don't have that at all in South Africa yet. Our regulatory system hasn't delved or gone into that space yet. So we've actually learned a huge amount from looking at how things are taking place in Malaysia and following the principles of good micro design, etc. That's in that micro good practice guidelines document put out by the MQF. Just go back a sec, Charlotte. Thanks. So anyway, so we're learning very much as we go and looking at international standards in terms of how to do micros. And as I've said, we've then broken down one module into 2 micro courses. And as you can see from the kind of content I've spoken about that's in the courses, we have, we're drawing from those different streams I mentioned, like business management, human resource management, etc. And we need to make sure that the learning hours are equivalent, so that 140 notional hours are covered between the 2 micros. So that, if you take course 1 and course 2 together, you've got at least your 140 notional hours. And at the moment, when Charlotte spoke about us doing product testing, we've tested kind of the first micro of a source module, and we're now busy developing the second partner micros that would go with the first one, that together would then be equivalent to the source module. So those are busy being developed now and will be coming in 2020. Thanks, Charlotte. So just to then give you a little bit more about the structure within a micro course is, as many of you will know, because you're also partners of Open Learning, it's a great platform for social learning activities. So you'll see that in addition to, content sharing through readings and videos, or students doing their own self-reflection kind of activities, there's a lot of social learning activities that are going on, discussion groups, huge amount of peer engagement. And I think really a lot of the learning in the course sits in that space, right? Where the students are dialoguing with each other and debating and learning in that space. We also have something that we've called peer reviews. So each course includes 2 peer reviews, which requires students to give quite in-depth feedback to another student. So yes, there's the discussion groups where students are always commenting and sharing together. But with a peer review, it's where a student needs to do a particular, very practical kind of activity where they're applying something. So for example, in our Intro to Human Behavior course, one of their peer reviews is they need to apply Prochaska's model of behavior change to their own life and to changes and behavior changes they are trying to make. And they write that up. And then the students are given like a rubric, which then helps them to now give detailed feedback to another student. It's not graded or anything, but it's an opportunity to engage in kind of deep learning and as well as reviewing, which is a learning process in and of itself, when the student's giving feedback to another student. And then assessment-wise, we have 3 types of assessment in each micro. So we do midway, we do a MCQ type of quiz, with matching items and true and false, some ABC kind of answers. And that counts for 30% of the student's final grade. Then there's another formative assessment, which we call course engagement, which is where the facilitator is grading the students all the way across the course for how well they are engaging with each other in the peer discussion, the group discussions, and all of those different pieces they're doing. So we're wanting to acknowledge the effort the students are already putting in and actually, award them a grade for doing that. And then each course also has a summative assessment in the last week of the course, which counts 40%, where, of course, all of the outcomes across the course are being demonstrated and measured in some sort of way. That activity might look quite different depending on, the nature of the course and the content. Week-wise, you can see there it says 6 weeks. This is something we're still figuring out. If you think about 140 hours, and maybe the course is 80 hours or 60 hours in length, 60 hours over a 6-week course is 10 hours a week. It's quite a bit. Is that too much even? 80 hours over 6 weeks, though, that feels like, quite a lot. So, we're considering at the moment with some of the courses we're working on at the moment, maybe we make them 8 weeks and we spread that time out so that 80 hours is then spread out over 8 weeks instead of the 6 weeks to maybe make it more manageable for students. Because remember, they're working people, with many things to juggle, as we know, because I'm sure most of us here are working people ourselves. So we're learning and we're figuring things out. And as Shara said, we're product testing. And so if we were to give another talk like this next year, we might have quite a different talk based on what we would have learned at that point in time. But I guess that loops us back to saying what we're saying at the beginning is we are learning. We don't have all the answers. We're also trying to figure out what's the best way to go about things. But I think both in terms of engaging this year with open learning, we've learned a huge amount, as well as looking at how micro-credentials are positioned in Malaysia. We've also learned a huge amount as well. So we've been very, very grateful for that. And Charlotte, unless there's something else you'd like to say right now, we can maybe open it up for questions.
No, nothing from my side.
Okay. So I can see there are a few questions in the chat here. Balasanda has asked, how will the learner be supported? Any facilitation from the course teacher? Great question, Balasanda. Thank you. So yes, we do have learner support. We have a facilitator that journeys with the students across the 6 weeks. They really have 2 core roles to play, because remember, Charlotte, everything's asynchronous. So we don't have live webinars with the facilitator or anything like that, but the facilitator's popping in every day to see what the students have been doing, to look at their discussions, to comment, to ask, thought-provoking questions, to promote discussion, that sort of thing. So to pick up any potential inaccuracies maybe that have cropped up in terms of content or anything like that. So they're available in that sort of way. And then they also play a grading role that you would have heard with the course engagement and the summative assessment. So so that is how the learner is supported. Also, we have a course coordinator as well. And so for various other kinds of questions, students can also reach out to the course coordinator around, whatever logistical questions maybe, or something else, like the kind of course coordination sort of questions that aren't about content specifically, if they need assistance. So that's how we've been supporting the learners so far. Again, it's as we learn as we go, we might need to change, some of the things that we've been doing. Okay, and then Julius has a question here. Since you have now it's jumping around. Since you now have experienced in the physical model of learning and the online model, what were perhaps top 2 to 3 interesting insights you learned on your journey? Any feedback from students and lecturers? Okay, so we are busy running the first courses now. So the students are in the middle of them. So they haven't yet got to the place where they're giving feedback yet, or our facilitators. We'll gather that next month. I think what's probably been quite interesting though, Julius, is SACAP already had an online campus and part of our qualifications are offered online. But now we needed to move still online, but into a slightly different way of doing things online. In the short course space, I think, as many of you would also find for yourselves, it's anything and everything exists, right? Because it's not a regulated space, and that comes with pros and cons. So prices are completely different. A 2-hour course and a 20-hour course, people can be charging the same things, or charging a huge amount of money for a 2-hour course. The length could be anything. The content and robustness, there's so many different kind of degrees out there. So I think one of the things we definitely learned was, looking at and trying to establish sort of best practice, then also kind of realizing what is it that we do at SACAP that then we bring into that space that we feel, is going to add value, and what we feel, kind of works in terms of how we structure our courses from the South African perspective as well. So maintaining our equivalencies I was talking about earlier in South Africa, and then, trying to put that out then into an international market and to see, how people respond to that. So I think we in South Africa as well, we are required to be very South African in terms of the context and our content. So now we needed to also expand our content and include international examples as well, to make things more applicable to an international audience. So I think figuring out our structure, which, as I described earlier, was one of our biggest learnings, but again, that's emerging and can change. Expanding things for an international context has been another learning. And I think what we're still learning, when we'll be learning, is what do the students want? Because I think that is such an important question. And until now, when we're starting to put something out and start gathering feedback, we don't know what they want. We've guessed, we've looked at things and tried out kind of to put our best foot forward in terms of what we think they might want. But as we get actual feedback, then we will need to adapt and continuously change. That's the word I was looking for, in order to be relevant and to meet the needs of students.
I'm going to jump in here and also say, Julius, we've used a combination of content in our courses, and that's also why our partnership with Open Learning works so well, because in a classroom-based learning environment, you've got other peers, you've got lecturers. So we've taken the academic content and also, there's reading material, there's a bit of writing. Like Caroline mentioned, there are quizzes, but also videos that explain certain theories. So we've also tried to have different types of engagement for the online learning model. And I think, gathering feedback as we go on and tweaking and fine tuning, we'd, like Caroline said, in a year's time, if we had to present at another symposium, we might give completely different feedback. But yes, it's been an interesting journey. And then Caroline Bhavani asks, what is the feedback from employers and industry partners in having bite-sized courses to upskill the workforce in psychology field, if any?
Yeah. So that's such an interesting question, because the field of psychology is already kind of then saying, well, that is the field. But actually, psychology applies, as I was saying earlier, to all sectors and all industries. So psychology itself is very regulated, and this is for Malaysia and South Africa, where, if you want to study to be a psychologist, there's a very set path that you have to follow and training, et cetera. I think more what we are trying to do is actually reach all employees that are needing essential skills, remember, not soft skills, to do their work better. And therefore, that could be in any industry. So one of the things that we are wanting to still do that we weren't able to get to do this year is to actually engage with industry and industry partners and try and seek industry endorsement for some of the courses that we are doing. So we would like to do that in time to come, because I think in general, employers are quite positive and open towards their employees doing bite-sized chunks, because it means it's more manageable within their work, within life, and it's also kind of more immediate, so you need certain skills. Go do a course that's about those skills now, rather than maybe sign up for a degree that might take several years, that somewhere in there the skills sit. But again, it depends on what the employee's needs are, if they're wanting to do a full qualification or short skills. But we need to explore that a bit more. I think is really kind of the answer to that question.
Yeah, and also the credit bearing, the credentialing part of it. I think employers also want to know if a course is recognized internationally, who's reviewed it, who's kind of given the stamp of approval. So that's also why we're very happy that our courses have been reviewed by Open Learning and are now Open Creds. And I think just that credibility aspect of bite-sized courses is also quite important to keep in mind.
Yeah. And a related question, if I can jump down to Balasander's question, he says, will the learners receive any recognition or certification upon completion of the standalone micro-credential course by SACAP? So it's a great question, thank you. And yes, so if students complete and pass, so remember they get graded and they need overall a grade, a minimum of 50% in order to pass. But if they do that, then we issue them with a certificate and a digital badge. And definitely if you are wanting to study in South Africa with SACAP, we know that course is now equivalent to X within the qualification. So if the students done the 2 partner micros that go together and they've got the 2 certificates, then they wanted to do a degree with us, then they would be exempt from doing that module, because they've essentially done the module already by doing the 2 short courses. Even if a student doesn't want to study with us, those certificates say how many learning hours the student's done. The digital badge has a breakdown of what's been covered, as you know, kind of in terms of outcomes, etc. So another institution should also be able to then do a bit of an evaluation and see whether in their own degrees, whether it's in Malaysia or South Africa, whether there is equivalency there as well, that the student might be able to, I think in Malaysia, you speak about credit transfer, the student can be given credits for it, or in South Africa, we speak about recognition, of prior learning.
Yeah.
What has been, Bhavani has a question here, what has been the learning journey with developing micro-credentials? Well, my goodness, a huge learning journey. And we're still learning. Like I was saying earlier, we're pioneering this in South Africa. There's only a couple of other institutions in South Africa that work with micro-credentials. I think even there's lack of standardization in the space of micro-credentials. People are calling things micro-credentials. Maybe they're not even actually micro-credentials. So there's all kinds of things happening. And I'm not talking about only South Africa. I'm talking about more broadly. But anyway, we've had to be figuring a lot of things out as we go. And we've had to try and work with, what are best practice, and then what do we know at SACAP, and how do we make this fit into our local South African qualifications framework, so that one day when our regulators say to us, but how do you know these things are equivalent, we can show them the evidence and the principles we've applied, to demonstrate that equivalency, for example. So I think a lot of it has been trial and error, and we've had to figure things out as we go along. I guess many of you that have been in a similar situation where you're learning the open learning system and how to set it up and how things work there, and, creating the course itself and designing it. And, one of the challenges when you're creating a fully asynchronous course that you want to be equivalent is creating 80 hours of learning time. That's quite a lot, through asynchronous activities and so on. So I think, it's been a challenge figuring that out. We've also, of course, wanted to meet the open quality criteria. So we were ensuring that was happening. But probably one of the biggest challenges, I think, has actually been sourcing the content. And I'll tell you why. At SACAP, we use electronic textbooks that are licensed with a provider. So, and there's limitations on how many users can use those textbooks at any one time. Now, one of the things we do in the qualification space is we intentionally have very small classes, no more than 25. So it hasn't mattered in the context in South Africa with the qualifications to date. But now with our micros, we'd like to have 100 students in the class. You can't be using material that doesn't allow them all to access it at the same time. So we've had to find replacement material for all of the textbooks, etc., that are used in the qualifications. So remember I was saying earlier that the reading material might be different, but it's equivalent and covering the same content. But finding that content hasn't been easy. It's a lot of work. There's not a huge amount of open source textbooks that exist, for example. So, we do our best and we curate it all, but it's not easy. It's quite challenging to pull all of that together and create a robust course where, as you've probably heard, we are trying very much to have academic rigor and robustness and be very practical and user-friendly, for people doing the micros. So I think that's also an interesting balancing act to maintain in the course design.
Yeah. And Bhavani's last question was, to what extent students are engaged cognitively and effectively?
That is an excellent question. I see from Abd Karim. So, I guess that's a hard one to answer, because how do we know that they're engaged cognitively and effectively, or are they kind of zipping through things sort of quite superficially? And this is one of the reasons why we put the course engagement as being something across the course. And we've given students quite clear guidelines to, actually complete the activities with, which is hoping that they're going to then complete them with depth because of those guidelines, rather than just responding, oh, great comment to appear or something like that. So, there's that. Of course, we made, the open learning, as measures the student progress and then moving through the work. So there's that as well. And then what we've tried to do with the assessments is measure, again, they're not superficial, but they're set up to actually help students apply what they've been learning. And if they're able to apply the readings and the videos and the discussion groups that they've been moving through, that would indicate that they've been engaged, cognitively as much as possible in an effective way. But if you have any other tips about how we can, measure that, then that would be great. And I guess just to add there, it's not only cognitively right, but it's also like emotionally, a whole holistic student experience. And maybe that comes with us being in the space of essential skills. But a lot of what we're trying to do is, yes, there's content to learn and tools and practical skills for students, but there's also the self-development aspect that is so important as well in relation to essential skills. And that comes back to self-understanding, self-reflection. So yes, I've learned about this great theory now from psychology, but what does that mean for me in my life? And how do I want to do something differently in my life as a result of knowing that? So I think that's also an important kind of learning that's implicitly built into the courses that maybe, Charlotte, we don't highlight enough on our website and stuff, now that I think about it. But yeah, so thanks for that question. And then another
one. Yes. Is there any initiative to harmonize the credit transfer among the micro-credential providers?
Yeah, so I don't know if you're asking me that question particularly or like the broader global society, but I only say that because I think globally, I guess in time to come, we are all working towards harmonizing credit transfer. I guess there's the international portability, right, that exists within all of our qualification frameworks. So the MQF, the NQF, when students have done those various qualifications at their levels with the concomitant credits, any student should be able to port internationally, right? I mean, that's how our education systems are set up. So I guess in a simple answer is that because we are aligning our micros to our national qualification system, that should be able to happen. However, I think a more nuanced answer could be that, something that we could do at SACAP, for example, is engage with various providers in Malaysia and actually look at, for that particular provider, what would that credit transfer look like, and then almost potentially kind of have maybe a mutual endorsement of sorts or something like that to facilitate students being able to easily have those micros recognized in Malaysia. Yeah, not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that's it for the Q&A session. If anyone would like to visit the SACAP Global website, I've popped the link there in the chat, and yeah, feel free to touch base with us anytime. And thank you so much for joining us for our showcase. This has been really fun.
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte, as well, for sharing the space with me. And just to echo Charlotte's thoughts, thank you, everybody, as well, for joining and asking some great questions and for patiently listening to us as well. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.